All right, so today I'm going to be taking you through the cell cycle. So the cell cycle is basically the cell's life. So during the cell cycle, the cell goes through a period of growth, and then it's going to spend some time preparing to divide, and then it divides into two identical daughter cells. So the way that we define the cell cycle is all of the stages of activity that a cell is going to do from the time that it finishes a cell division until it finishes its next cell division. So for cells that are dividing, they go through this cycle over and over again. Some cells never go through that cycle, but most of the cells in your body do end up going through this full life cycle at various times. So the cell cycle can be divided into two parts. So the first part is called interphase. This is the time when the cell is not dividing. This is G1, S, and G2 parts of the cell cycle. This is where the cell spends most of its time, right? Most of its life is in when it's not dividing. And that's mainly because when a cell is dividing, it can't do any of its functions like making proteins. So it spends most of its time not in that division stage. The second part is the cell division, and this is where it is going to actually divide. And we're going to look at the process of mitosis and cytokinesis as part of that cell division. So here's a graphic of the cell cycle, kind of telling you what's happening along the way. So we're going to take a look at G1, when the cell is performing all of its regular activities. And then we have S phase, where something called DNA replication is going to happen. G2 phase is where the cell is going to prepare for division. And then we end up in our M phase, which is mitosis, which is dividing the nucleus, and then cytokinesis, which is actually dividing the cytoplasm and the entire cell. So we're going to break down each of these stages. We'll start with G1. G1 is growth. So the cell is going to grow to its mature size, and this is when it's going to perform all of its typical activities. Like I said, cell's main job is to make proteins, and then those proteins do everything for your body. They'll also be performing metabolism. Your cells would be doing cellular respiration. Plant cells would be doing both cellular respiration and photosynthesis. This kind of depends on the cell. But this is where just, again, your regular activities are happening. This is the time that the cell is in most often, right? Because that's when it's working. If a cell gets a signal that it needs to divide, it will enter into S stage, which stands for synthesis. And what you're going to do here is going to copy the cell's DNA. So you're going to do DNA replication. And we're just going to take all of the DNA that's in the cell and we'll make an exact copy of it. That has to happen before a cell can divide. So a cell cannot divide if it has not copied its DNA first. And essentially what you're doing is making a copy of all the chromosomes so that when you make your new cells, the new cells have all the chromosomes that they need to have. All right, following S, we have G2. This is our second growth phase. This is when the cell is going to prepare for division. So it's going to get ready to divide. It's going to double in size. It's going to copy all of its organelles. And a special structure called a centromere is going to form. And this is something that is needed for cell division to happen. All right. And it's the only time it's in the cell is during cell division. All right, once the cell passes G2, we then enter the M stage. This is mitosis and cytokinesis. So this is where the cell's nucleus is going to actually divide into two identical nuclei. So we're going to actually divide the nucleus. Essentially what you're doing when you divide the nucleus is separating all of that copied DNA into two bundles. So you're going to have two bundles of DNA. And once you have those two new nuclei with those two bundles of DNA, then cytokinesis will happen. And this is where the cell actually divides. And we end up at the end with two identical daughter cells. So we will take a closer look at mitosis in our next video.